Another little question from Canada, Atiyyah. After sort of seeing the best and worst of the Canadian industry, what have been some of your major takeaways from that, and what would be some of the lessons that you would share and impart with people that maybe haven't had the same exposure that you have? Because I think particularly again from Europe looking over to North America, there's a lot of people that maybe see what Canada's done as the haven, that's how it should be done, it's a perfect system. But in reality, how have you found it, and what sort of mistakes and issues have you seen along the way as that sort of policy's been rolled out over the last few years?
I would say the biggest one for sure, and it's a trend that we see in most emerging markets. So the really funny thing, and it's a little sometimes funny, but a bit frustrating as a consultant. We go into an emerging market, we tell them that we can pretty much predict what the next 3 to 5 years is going to look like based on what it's looked like in every single market's first 3 to 5 years, California, Canada, etc. And they don't always heed that advice or follow what we're telling them. But typically what we see is cultivation kicks off. A lot of people get into cultivation. There's a hypersaturation. So then too much product comes to market. The price points kind of get driven down. The quality gets driven down. There becomes this, super high fixation on THC being over, 20%, 25%, 30%. It gets more and more aggressive. Then we see companies go bankrupt. That decreases the competition level. And the companies that really make it to the other side are either ones that have a really, really strong financial backing, or they've run a very cost-effective operation, or they've identified and established themselves as a premium brand where they're still pulling in that craft or higher end price point. So if you're not going to fall into one of those categories, usually you're not going to make it. So one of the lessons learned, I think, from Canada, and every country has done this a bit differently, it's how they grant licenses and how many licenses they grant. So I don't think anyone's quite cracked the code on how to do this, because I know in the States before, I think shortly after Canada legalized, I had 2 consulting projects, which were in 2 different states, and they were going on a lottery system. So everyone brings their applications in, they vet all the applications, all the vetted applications go into a lottery system. I've seen other ones where I believe certain states have said, if you have a previous criminal conviction in cannabis, they're allowing them to come into that first round of lottery. Canada was kind of a free-for-all at the beginning. It was like, if you want to get a license, you can get a license. And at the very beginning, there wasn't even a requirement to have a building. You just had to have a floor plan and they would give you a license. And as time ticked on, they put the requirement to have a full building because they needed to somewhat try to limit the amount of people they were granting licenses to, because they started to realize as well, people were not taking licenses to use themselves. They were taking them and reselling them down the line or doing other things with them. So licensing is a really big piece if you're drafting your own regulations, to think about how you want to fairly ensure that everybody has access to obtaining licenses, but also that you don't hurt your own supply chain by allowing this really aggressive hypersaturation, because nobody wins in that case. When everyone's product is crashing and the prices are crashing and you have a ton of job loss and bankruptcies, that hurts your cannabis economy and your regular economy as well, because people would have left stable jobs to transition into the cannabis industry. So